Well, as it normally happens with aviation, being on time can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So I've been told that we need to help the group get back on time, so we're going to go a little bit faster than expected. And but first of all, I wanted to thank Costas and Hermes for inviting us and for inviting me to be here. Oh wow, we even get a table. Look at that. Oh, wow. So again, I want to thank Costas for allowing me to be here and to chair this important and very high level panel. At the same time, I know Costas doesn't want me to shy away from being a little bit controversial and asking some of the maybe some thought-provoking questions, not only of the panelists, but I want to see this more like a roundtable discussion or square crypt discussion, however we want to put it. So please feel free, if any of you are in agreement or disagreement with something our panelists say, just kind of raise a finger or something, get my attention, and I'll give you the floor so you can participate. I find these events are much more interesting when you get that kind of interaction versus us talking. Also, don't take it personal if during the conversation I kind of redirect or I know some people like to talk a lot, and I'm not looking at anybody. So if I kind of, bring it back to ensure that everybody gets a fair share of the floor. So to start, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, and today we've heard already how well this industry has done, and we should be extremely proud. I mean, we should be extremely proud of what we've done on from a safety perspective. This is still the safest mode of transportation worldwide, one way or the other. So very proud of that. Should be very proud of the growth, and Henrik also did a great job explaining and the size and how much we've grown and how much we expect to continue to grow. The fact that we made it available for everybody, and it's sad, as Alexandre said, that instead of seeing that as a positive, that some countries are seeing that is a negative, and it's something that we definitely need to work on. And finally, something that wasn't spoken here, but I think is very critical also. Aviation finally is being profitable. And you need a profitable aviation in order to have a sustainable growing aviation. So we're not extremely profitable. I mean, we're barely covering the cost of capital, but at least we're in the right side of the map, of the graph. Having said that, and quoting Alexandre with a lot of humility, we also have to see that there's a number of things we haven't done very well. And this is my perspective. If you look at the basic product, our basic product is to take customers from point A to point B. What we do today is probably worse than we did 25 years ago. Why? Because it takes longer to get to the airport, it takes longer to go through the airport, there's more air congestion, and the airplanes are not going any faster. So your basic product, which was take passenger from A to B, for any other industry, we have not improved it considerably, if we have improved it. Secondly, technology implementation. If you look at all the technology that's out there and all the new technologies, aviation, yeah, we have new engines and new aircraft, but 15% increase in fuel over 10 years, which I guess every time they land in Europe, you could argue that if you look at, you wouldn't accept that kind of advancement in other technologies, in computers, in iPhone, So again, I don't think we are leaders in that side either. And lastly, and this was spoken a lot today, attracting the best and brightest people. I remember when I started in aviation was, oh my God, you're in aviation, you're so lucky, this is the place to be. Today, I'm lucky that I have two, and I'll give you my personal experience, I have two children who are engineers. High tech, they like technology and all that. They would not even consider going into aviation. It's much more exciting to go into all kinds of other things. And trust me, I tried. So again, I think we need to do a better job of that. So with putting that in context, I really think this industry is ready for some major disruption, somehow. You know, there is something's going to change how this industry works. I don't think we're going to be doing the same thing 10, 15 years from now from where we are today. So, going into the panel itself, we're asked by Costas to talk about, you know, we want the panel to see what they see as are the challenges set by automation and artificial intelligence for the future of aviation, education and training. And of course, in order to address that, I think first we need to look a little bit, okay, what do we think is that automation? I mean, how is this automation, artificial intelligence going to change the industry, and then what are the needs for that? So to start, I would like to maybe start from a global perspective. And we've got three very strong panelists, obviously. First, I introduce Captain Aysha Al Hamili, who I don't think needs a lot of introduction. Everybody knows her if you're in the industry, but she's the UAE permanent representative to the ICAO Council. Welcome. We also have Mario Nemeth, who is the Director General of Civil Aviation of the Slovak Republic. And at the end, we have Florian Guillermet, who is the Executive Director of SESAR. So with that, I'll give the floor to Aysha. If you can tell us, you know, from a global perspective, not only from UAE, but from an ICAO perspective, how do you see the, you know, automation and artificial intelligence changing the industry, and then we can get into the education training part.
First, thank you, Alex, and I have to say I'm honored to be here, and I don't see Costas, but I would like to thank Costas for this very timely meeting, and it is great to be among the leaders of the industry. I think it is important to talk about this issue because this is not the future, this is now basically, and it is happening. To talk about the issue of automation and artificial intelligence, we need to just put things into perspective. Now we live in the fourth industrial revolution. And just to give you a brief idea, we were in the technological revolution. We're no more in the technological revolution. We're in the fourth industrial revolution, which means that it is the connection between technology and the biological world, the technological world, and the physical world. And this is where AI and innovation comes in. So I have to say, coming from a background, well, for those who don't know my age, I won't say it, but I am in a very uniquely positioned age where I am called X-Millennial, which means I am between X and Y generation, and then afterward I'm going to get into the generations because we need to.
You realize everybody's going to be Googling right now what age range that is.
Yes. So hopefully they will not know where I stand. And it's a very, very small, unique positioned age group, and which means that I lived through the analog world, digital world, and now living into the fourth revolution. Now, in aviation, innovation is not new, and all of the leaders touched on this. We've seen how we transformed by flying by 5 people in the cockpit or 3 people in the cockpit to now 2, and very soon, and actually technically you don't need pilots in the cockpit, very soon we won't have anybody in the cockpit. So this is not really new. The new thing is how are we going to deal with it, with the changes and growth in the industry. In the past, from what I've seen, the way we manage the industry, we wait for accidents to happen for us to change our standards or to take steps forward. And the big question, how are we going to prepare for it now in order to be at the forefront and not wait for accidents to happen? Now, innovation is happening, machine learning is happening. AI is the next challenge because machine learning, our systems are basically running by machines, and the innovators are pushing the envelope forward. AI is the next thing. And we were at the blockchain summit a month ago in Abu Dhabi. And one of the presentations that caught my attention, it was the decision making and how AI is going to change the decision making process in the cockpit. And it was a video of 2 basically identical scenarios of rejected takeoff. One is by pilot and one by AI. And they were put in the same scenario, the same situation. And the reaction of the pilot and the reaction of the AI showed that the AI reacted 3 seconds faster than the pilot and more precise than the pilot. And this shows you that actually it requires a lot of input of data, of course, to reach that position. But that made the machine intelligence, and this is where we are coming to the AI and not only machine operable. So
you seem to be making a very good case to removing pilots from the cockpit.
I'm not actually. ICAO, this is something I was a member of one of the panels briefly, and I have to say I was against removing the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And Airbus and Boeing was actually part of the discussing the the Annex 1, the pilot licensing.
Yeah.
And they said we don't need the same requirements to fly basically our aircrafts, and we need to look into what make pilots fly nowadays and what are the requirements. And you said, oh my God, no, we need 250 hours, we need the airmanship, we need to fly. They said, the aircraft will not let you. Basically now you can fly the aircraft with a computer IT guy better than a pilot.
Yes.
Because just is automated. And I have to say, I went back to flying last year, and I flew the Diamond. For those who don't know, it's fully glass cockpit, twin engine aircraft, and this is where they train the pilots in. That was in the UAE, and then I came here to do my Canadian license, and they asked me to do the analog world. I was just sitting there, anxious, overwhelmed, having the map in my hand, and having the compass, and all the flight computers. And I said, I cannot do this anymore. I need just my iPad and my ADSB, which I bought, and it is online, portable, stick it in, and you fly, and you are fully automated.
Yeah.
It was safer, it was more efficient, I had more awareness, and it gave me the best routes. And not only this, it gave me the information on the airport, the hotels around the airport, the fuel of the airport, and the transportation around the airport. So yes, and after I've been through this, yes, I am with it. It is happening, but we need to be more engaged.
But do you think, and I mean, we have a lot of experts here on the floor, do you think we're going in that direction? I mean, how long is it going to be that we maybe don't need? I mean, the typical joke was in the new airplanes, you don't need you need a pilot and a dog. Yeah, the pilot, I guess everybody's heard it. No, the pilot to feed the dog, and the dog to bite the pilot if you try to touch anything. Are we going in that direction, having just one pilot on board and then let technology do itself?
Technologically, it's possible. Psychologically, it's still we are not ready for it. But now with the ADSB and with the automation, basically, and with the flow, the traffic management flow, basically the aircraft could fly better, faster, and more efficient and safer with all the interconnectivity of the system. So technically speaking, technology is there,
absolutely,
but we are not ready to be with an aircraft with no.
Well, and you see now what's happening now in the in many markets, but in the US with all these self-driving cars and the Teslas, etc. It's amazing the technology they have. I mean, it's the equipment is half is technology, and half of the cost of the car is the software. And it will take a little bit of time for people to get used to it. But once they start seeing cars being not driven or that drive themselves, it could go to quickly in that direction.
But
as
you
well.
need to think about your passengers. Who are
Yeah.
your passengers? The passengers are, the younger generation is growing.
Yeah.
And the younger generation are more acceptable of having actually a fully automated cockpits and
Very
fully
true.
automated systems. It's us.
Yes.
Us
The-
as
the- well, no, you're excluded from that group, but the rest of us.
Baby boomers and
Yes.
ex-millennials.
Yes. Excellent. So, continuing then with Florian, what is your expectation in terms of how will automation and AI change ATM, not ATM, but the industry?
Okay, maybe just before talking about automation, I'd just like to focus a bit on the introductions that have been made previously. And to me, what's coming out very strongly, and this is really what I perceive when I deal, for instance, with universities, with the aviation value chain, that we really have two big challenges ahead of us. The first one is the energy transition. This is really something which is fundamental in the years to come for aviation, and we have to understand that the way aviation has developed so far is not going to be the same in the future. We need to have new energies kicking in. We don't know yet exactly how, exactly what it will be, but this is clearly ahead of us. And if you look at this, you will see that these energies will will cost much more than what we have with kerosene today. They will cost 3, 4, maybe 10 times more than what we know today with kerosene. Because they would be very complicated to produce in the first place. If you look at biofuel, if you look at synthetic fuels, for instance, they will be complex to be produced, they will cost more, and at least to start with, this means that any single drop of this energy will have to be saved in the system. We need to have a fully efficient system to manage the flights, to manage the aircraft, and so on. And to me, this is where the second big challenge, which is the digital transformation, kicks in. To allow this very efficient system, we need to bring the different parts of the chain together. We've been operating for a very long time, it's getting better today, but with very silo approach. We had airports, we had airlines, we had aircraft manufacturers, we had authorities, everybody trying to make his best in his own area. The result is what we know today as a system, but there are some limits to it. The limits is really in terms of how you bring the value together across the chain. And to me, it's really very interesting to see the aircraft manufacturers, the engine manufacturers, for instance, with whom we are working very closely with, developing really very fuel-efficient aircraft, for instance, with 6–10% of improvement in terms of fuel consumption and CO2 reduction. And then you see those aircrafts sitting on the tarmac with engines on, waiting for takeoff, or having crazy trajectories in the air because we have a congested airspace. This is how what I mean by the value.
But I mean, that discussion has been going on. I mean, I left the association world 5 years ago, and that it was already, you know, we have been talking about this for the last 10, 15 years. You know, we need to work together. And how long are we going to continue talking about this before something happens?
We simply can't afford to continue to talk about it. We have to act on it. It's really something which is becoming vital, because I don't think the new generation in particular will accept that we continue in this way. And where the digital transformation, automation kicks in, it's really by bringing together the different components of the value chain. When you talk about information, you think horizontal. You stop to think in terms of airports, airlines, and so on. You really think in terms of, okay, what is the service I want to deliver? What is the added value I want to deliver to the consumer? And this is where I do believe that this digital transformation is something vital for us. It's vital as well in the sense that, maybe just to echo what Alexandre said, I think we are innovative in aviation in what we do. We do have innovative products. Where we are less innovative, in my opinion, is in terms of how we do it. We have innovative products, but we are kind of conservative in terms of how we bring that into operations. We always tend to use the same methodology. We always tend to use it the same way.
Is that because of the excuse of safety? We're afraid that any changes is going to change the, you know, it's going to add a new risk into the system? Or it's just the industry is just not aggressive to bringing that kind of change?
I could argue that it's partly related to because of the safety implications, because we've reached a point where we all say that we have a safe system, and we are all afraid somehow that by changing the way we operate it, we might bring some risk to it. And I think we have to come around this and to consider that the risk of not doing anything is higher than the risk of doing something. And this is really what we have to change in our culture, in our philosophy, to bring this energy transition and digital transformation into reality. I think as well we've been complacent to a certain extent with ourselves in looking at how the system evolves, and this is why the newcomers are telling us when we are dealing with drones operators, when we are dealing with people that are sending balloons, all sorts of new types of air operations. They take it from a very different perspective, and they are not saying safety is not critical. They take it at the core of what they want to achieve, but they look at it from a different perspective. And for instance, what is very interesting is how they look at data in this environment. Our traditional way of looking at data and technology in aviation is to have something which is very reliable, but based only on one stream of technology. So that's true for GPS, that's true for all the different components that we are using in the system. They have a very different approach. They consider that none of it can be fully reliable. So they aggregate information, they put it together, and through algorithms, through technology, through computer science, they are able actually to prove that they can do better than what we do with a single piece of technology.
But, and that's a very good point. They take the best of what's around and build something new. In our industry, especially aviation industry, in commercial aviation, there tends to be a hesitation to working together across different suppliers, across different partners. There's such a competitive. They see it as, how can I say this, almost like a competitive advantage, and by having those barriers, for example, to that information, say, hey, if I'm the only one who has access to that information, I'm the only one who can provide that service, hence I have a competitive or pricing advantage or whatever. How do we break that in this, in this industry, which is so important? I mean, we're talking about, everybody's talking about big data and all the things that are coming, and all the data for example, for an area that I'm familiar with, on the maintenance side, for example. These new aircraft produce all kinds of data on the systems, etc. But unless you're able to take that data and share it, collect it from all the different operators, see it across, it really has limited value. And it has a lot of value to the OEM. Is that something, how can you address that?
I think what you've been describing so far is a bit of protectionism, let's face it. And we have indeed in the industry, and in particular in the air navigation service provision side of the industry, a lot of monopolies which are trying somehow to protect their own future. I think this is something we need really to address in terms of how we move the system forward. I mean, look, SESAR, it's been going on for almost 15 years now. We have proven that with technology we can upgrade the performance of the system in terms of capacity, better trajectories and so on. But still, we face difficulties in moving this new technology into operations. Why do we do that? It's because the way we do it is the way of the past.
Yes.
The way we do it is with the same financing mechanisms, the same way of dealing with the ownership of data in the system, and we have to break this. We cannot continue to think in terms, for instance, of physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure in aviation for tomorrow doesn't mean anything. The things that will make things fly are data services.
As Dr. Aliu was mentioning, I mean, the aviation might not be at airports anymore. You might not need airports. With the new technology, you can fly from one place to the other. So it could change. I mean, the dynamics of everything could change.
Just to provide a small answer to your question as an example, I think what is very key is the way we regulate the system. And the way, for instance, we move from being very prescriptive in terms of technology to having performance objectives, performance-based regulation. This is really something which is at the core of ICAO's approach now, but we have to move it into reality, and we are not there yet. And for instance, when I look at communication system, we are still prescriptive on which technology we use, and we are not prescriptive on the level of performance that any kind of technology could achieve.
Well, and I think that's a very good segue. We have a regulator on the panel, so to hear his perspective in terms of, how is that affecting your job? How are you regulating this new technology, this automation?
Good morning to everyone, and I would like to thank the Costas and whole Hermes to allow me to have this honor to be here. And well, I don't want to be a devil's advocate, because a regulator, it's the person or a group of persons which has to regulate the new challenges, new visions, and etc. And it's not so easy job, because when you have to regulate, it means you have to take a lot of measures, and the first one for sure is safety. And all the time we are asking the question, is it safe? Because as Aysha mentioned, regarding the diamond, the plane, I'm flying sometimes the same plane too, and I remember this really nice glass cockpit. You can get all information, even really about the hotels. But I remember when I was studying in the university like a pilot, we had a classical map, pencil, and we were making the preparation. And all the time I was thinking, this is safe, it's perfect. I did personally my preparation, and I trusted this information. But what will happen if we will lose all information or connections and etc. in the air? Is it safe? Is it not? A lot of people will answer, okay, but this system is secure, it will never happen. I have one example like this. Because in my career, yeah, I was at ATCO as well, and during my training, we were discussing exactly if it's possible that there will be some shutdown of the system. And my boss told me it will never happen. On the next training, during the next training, simply one, it was somewhere in Electrocentral or I don't know, and there were shutdown of the system. The information was there, it was perfect, but there were no way how to transport the information on the screen. And we had the military fighter there and etc. That such a thing has happened. And again, the question, is it safe? And this is what we, like regulators, we had to address all the time. And thanks European Commission, EASA, and also Eurocontrol, we are delivering. But what I know, and it's true that regulators are all the time behind the development, and it will never change. Or we can change it, but after that we have to somehow slow down the innovations and or development.
Fair enough. Now let's get back to the second part of the question, which was, you know, the education, the training, attracting the right people. We've heard already today that we're having some challenges on that. Aysha, as part of the, how did you say, the XY generation? Something like that.
So I did a bit of research a while ago on how people learn, and actually I didn't do it voluntarily because my daughter challenged my knowledge, and she proved me she has better information and newer information, and she has access to information better than my knowledge. And this is when I started, you know, thinking, the way I'm teaching her, is it the right way? Because, you know, I am the old generation, you know, you need to do it. But then she asks why. And then, you know, when I catch myself saying, because I said so, I know that I feel that I
You sound like that, yes.
And so I did a bit of the research, and then it shows you there is now in the workforce, there are 5 generations. You have the baby boomers. I'm not gonna say who. So you have the baby boomers who are basically born in the 40s, and I think, yeah, in the 40s. Then you have the X generation, which I think the majority of us here. Then you have the Y generation. Are you a baby boomer? You're not a baby boomer, you are an X generation.
No. Baby boomers are born
40s to 60s.
40s
40s
to
to
60s.
60s?
Yeah.
So we're not
Okay.
X generation.
Oh boy, we need to get Y and A generation in this room. So
Yes.
there is the baby boomers, there is the X generation, there is the Y generation, and then of course the Y generation is what they call the millennials. And then what we need to think about is who are we dealing with? It's not only the millennials and the X, because we are already in the system and it's too late for us.
Absolutely.
What we think about is the Z generation and the Alpha generation. And these are the ones that are in schools, and these are the ones born between the 2000, and then you have the Alpha, which are born in 2010. And so what we need to think about is this generation. And we need to think about their psyche and how they learn. And we need to know that they are very smart. They have access to information. They are not people who will follow procedures or scripted tests.
Yep.
They want to contribute, not only receive. And they are the most globally connected and most informative generation. And in this context, you cannot really teach them the way we learn. And you cannot teach them in the way that the industry will prepare them in the future. And this is where it's going to be a big challenge. And I'm putting this again into my context. My daughter comes and says, why do I need to learn with my hand? Tell me whatever you want to read. And then she holds the iPad and she say whatever I want her to read. And I'm like, because you need to, because, well, mommy, why? I read it for you. So that's number one. And then the education from start, and this is when I say the Alpha generation. If my daughter is being taught that way, the old way that nowadays, probably by that time she graduates, she will not use, why am I wasting her time and not investing in creativity and technology and maybe, you know, robotics or something that will change the way her mindset is set.
Yeah.
Focus on STEM. The second thing, at the university levels, I was just graduating from McGill Institute, from an air and space law. And what I realize, and in the classroom you have a range of age and experiences, and what I realize is the young generation who challenge the status quo. Me and others, sometimes we don't have this critical thinking to say, but why they didn't do that? They
Yeah.
say, but why? Because there is something, happened in the social, I don't know what technological world. And then the professor will be just struck to say, well, this is based on cases, and all the cases are old, or the way the education is just so old. So our education system, to start with, whatever we do here, if we don't really tackle it at the root cause, what we are doing is going to be a waste of time.
Is that a role for ICAO? Is that a role for IATA? Is there a role for all of us? Who should we do that, and how should we do that?
So the power we have today, especially ICAO, the power ICAO have today, whatever you say, it's trustworthy and incredible. Whatever you say, it will be a streamline, it will be a target that everybody will try to reach for. Sometimes people are scared to take initiatives, but ICAO and the international organization have that power to say, states, this is where the industry is going, these are the gaps. We need that kind of skills. Let us engage together. And I was thinking actually about some of the solutions that I was just brainstorming about. Stakeholders today, we talk about ourselves, and this is something Alexander said, maybe we are talking too much of ourselves. Yes, industry is important to be here, but what I'm interested in is to hear also the kids.
Yeah, we should have a millennial here in the room, right?
Actually, Michael Jill, and I think last ATAG was the best ATAG I've ever attended. It's the best meeting probably I've ever attended, and so far. It was engaging, and not only this, they got teenagers to present initiatives that will change the way recycling system will happen in our industry. So I would like to see more probably young generation to see how they think, and maybe we're talking about the same thing, and Florence talked about the same thing. We're not creative because we were brought this way.
Yes.
We talk about the same thing. So stakeholders, and then you have the data collection and data sharing. Nowadays, Google know about you and me more than we know ourselves. They know our likes. They know anything basically. But we still think about data sharing in ICAO and the international organization. It is a big taboo. And this is where probably the technology of blockchain is going to revolutionize the way we share data and also store data. And data will help us in education. Why? Again, going back to those people who will learn. When you design a training system, you cannot just give a textbook anymore, because technology change and our just industry is changing. And with the use of AI in developing our educational system or training system, it will be customized to the person. Now it is happening. It will go to the speed and needs of the industry. So we will have this data based on all and previous experiences.
On that point, actually, I wanted to ask, just out of curiosity, out of the crowd here, the people we have gathered here, we're talking about big data and we're talking about artificial intelligence. How many of your companies, or how many of you are using artificial intelligence today to make decisions? Nobody?
Your phone.
Basically there.
But it clarifies a little bit in terms, there's a lot of opportunity, and for us it's very important, for this industry. All this data it's out there, but none of the people here have really access to that data to do that kind of analysis that is critical. And that's, to me, that's where a lot of the value is gonna come in. When you have whoever has access to all this data and is really able to analyze it correctly, will be able to come up with all kinds of new solutions, being of development of systems, better service to the passenger, but you have to be able to provide that data access to everybody to be able to do it. Otherwise, you're really only looking at silos of the whole chain.
Well, you actually do that in the revenue management robotized system, where you employ all the
True.
data
The airlines do use that in
and the
revenue
profiling
management.
of demand
Yeah.
in such a way that it optimizes the occupancy of the aircraft.
Yeah. Good point. Well, we've been hugging the conversation, and I know Costas asked us to be quick, so I'd like to get into the question and answer also, and we'll continue. But if there's any thoughts, anything we haven't covered, or any things you agree or strongly disagree. Go ahead, Angela.
Well, we've had safety management systems for a while now,
Mhm.
and that should be producing some data. Is that destined to be helpful in kind of keeping up our safety while we're trying different things? What has that been
Well-
telling us?
I can tell you some of my experience. I mean, one of the reasons I think the industry has had such a great decrease or improvement in safety has been some of the efforts done by organizations like IATA and ALTA in terms of getting that safety data from the aircraft and sharing it. You know, you have to remove obviously who's the pilot, who's the airline, you de-identify it, but by sharing that data, you really can see what are, not what you think could be the problem, but where are the critical areas where you should be working on. So there are examples of that, but again, my perspective, I think it's too slow of a process. We're always, there's always fears, there's always excuses as to no, we can't share data, or we don't want to, or what if. But I think there's been some movement, at least on the safety side from that perspective, yeah. But I don't know if there's examples on the operational side where that data has been shared across with success. Thank you. Comments?
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I think it's progressing, but it's still very slow. I mean, one of the most interesting things I've seen in terms of safety in relation to air traffic management is we've got a university who took the ADSB data, for instance. They took several months of data, and they drew out of it a map of safety critical areas in Europe, for instance, where you have potential higher safety risk in terms of managing the traffic. They've done that over, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. If you would consider how we would have done it in a traditional way, this would have taken years and years to share the data, to gather the right people who would agree to work on this data, and so on and so on, and they've just done it like this. So we have examples now of how we can use data, but it's true that it's still a bit of a taboo to a certain extent, and then how do we move that into operations?
But think of it, excellent example. If that data, what we now know happened in the Lion Air flight and might have happened in other flights, and if that data was instantaneously available to be able to run that, you might have been able to avert the Ethiopian crisis. Go ahead.
I just like to actually, you mentioned the Lion Air and Ethiopian tragic accidents. I'd like to get the panelists' view of how those tragic incidents are going to actually impact on people's ability and willingness to embrace automation and artificial intelligence going forward.
Who wants to take the first step?
If I may start, it will be a problem because now manufacturer has to take back the trust not only of users but and customers. And I would like to see this day, which it could be in June or in October when MAX will be again back in the operation, because this is the schedule. But it will be not so easy process. And for us, like for example for regulators, we have to be pretty sure that we will release this ban.
What are you going to ask that you wouldn't have asked before from the FAA to accept the MAX again for you?
What we will ask.
Or what has changed? Has anything changed?
There are suggested some changes, and if these changes will happen, and it will be proven that it's safe and it's enough, because we have not only we but other experts have to evaluate these changes. After that, we can accept this plan.
Sir, any, Jeff, sorry, Jeff and then there. And I have 5 minutes flagged from the back. Go ahead.
Now, at the risk of being a little parochial as the lawyer in the room, or one lawyer in the room, there's no agreed framework right now for the handling of data. We all know that modern aircraft are throwing off gigabytes of data as they operate, and that data has enormous potential for enhancing safety through prediction, through artificial intelligence. The question comes down to who owns it. And it's not only enough to own it, one has to be able to interpret it. And so we know that the manufacturers, the airframers are putting together companies that are for the purpose of analyzing the data and making that analysis available to the operator. It's essential. The operator has to have it. But there's a tension about that. That's inhibiting, I think, the use of that data. And it's an issue that the industry is going to have to get its arms around pretty quickly. Their operators feel as though they're being abused by monopoly power. The manufacturers are saying, we have the best capability to provide you the data that you need. We want our product to be safe. We want our product to be used properly.
Yeah.
So we have to resolve that.
But are those tools exclusive? Can they do that and you still have access? I mean, it's your data as airlines, you're flying your aircraft. Couldn't they be able to provide, and at the same time,
They do.
IATA or somebody have access to all that data, and if you decide to pull it together and provide a new solution or access to others, and wouldn't that benefit everybody? Unless you
I
want to
think
protect
the
them.
phrase is, at what price? It's a big issue right now.
Fair enough. Sorry.
So my question is very simply is relates to the regulatory system. Is it providing an incentive for us to roll out technology? Because Florian made a point here, is that we all know the technology, blockchain, AI, we're discussing it, okay? But the reality is that as an industry, we've been singularly unsuccessful at actually rolling out any new technology. We're still using 1940s VHF communication radio for discussing 90%. We're not, if you could just back, sorry Dr. Aliu, go back on ICAO, you know, we had fans A and fans B in the 90s, we never rolled it out. Data linking in Europe, we're struggling to roll it out. So what we are faced with is a regulatory system that is very heavily influenced by vested interests. And a good example recently, say in Florian's area, is that we have a very large air navigation service provider in Europe that wants to establish a business controlling drones, delivering pizzas in the lower airspace and all this. Now, you know, this is simply technologically not needed, yet they feel that this is their airspace, they should control this. So I feel that there's a little bit that can be done with the ICAO and worldwide to incentivize technology rollout. You know, because we need to do more to talk about it, we need to deliver it, because otherwise what will happen is it won't happen. I mean, just to finish, you know, Aysha as a pilot, we all know that the capability of the aircraft is much more than the capability of actually of what's used on the ground. I mean, they're throwing off gigabytes of data, we're discussing who owns it. Frankly, I don't really care who actually owns it, because we actually don't really use it. You know, tons of stuff comes off, stuff from sensors, from engines, and the airlines are much more advanced using it than we are. So the question is, can the regulatory system improve the deployment of technology, or what do we need to do?
Aysha, you want to address that one?
I just want to say something coming back from the UAE, where actually the government and the regulators are influencing the adoption of technologies, and especially, you know, the latest technology, regardless of what they call it, AI or blockchain. And what I've seen, you know, through the evolution of the UAE adoption of these technologies, the government becomes enabler, and it becomes more incubator, and it becomes more easy for, you know, the private sector and the education and everybody to get engaged in this discussion. Without that leadership from the regulators, which they could actually lead this process, then it becomes silo effect. And we've seen it in the blockchain event that ICAO hosted for the first time last month. There were many regulators and private sectors and operators who use the technology of data collection and data sharing, and they were calling ICAO to share data and to work together so that they break the silos. One of the issues was actually competitive advantage, but then this is our perception a lot of the time. But once it's led by ICAO, then it becomes more safe, it becomes more credible, and becomes more like a streamline where everybody is encouraged. States share their experiences, and you get actually surprised by the advancement in the private sector and also in the regulatory area. So ICAO could play a very major role in that.
Okay.
Let me say something. In the introduction of new technology, every time you introduce a new technology to improve the system, as practitioners of safety management, you have to recognize that that introduction itself carries its own risk. And you have to work to address those risks. You have to make a safety case. Because for whatever we do, our industry is susceptible to public confidence. So if in the process of introducing that new technology, which will provide overall safety performance, we are not careful, we'll lose the confidence of the public if an accident happens. And to regain it back is very difficult because air transportation still remains a mystery for a lot of people, how an aircraft can handle. You can explain it to engineers, pilots, but it's very difficult to explain it to people. So at every time we have to make a safety case. We have reached a level of reliability of our systems. We have to consider whether we can accept a lower level. The private public will not allow us as far as the carry people. But it is not in all cases. Talking about SESAR delivery, if for an aircraft operation you expect 10 to the power minus 6 to 10 to the power minus 9, okay, for delivering SESAR, which is how many grams? 400 grams. The drone itself is 500 grams, operating not at an airport, within, maybe we can accept something lower. But that is a case that has to be made as long as there is no interaction with. Last point on the regulatory process. That deliberative process of doing the safety case sometimes can be slow.
Yeah.
But it is inevitable if you want to maintain. So if you're moving from 2 pilots to 1 pilot, you have to make a safety case for it.
Of course, of course.
Now, can we do that faster? Yes. Our panel process is very long, but there is nothing in the convention that says that we have to adopt a standard through panel deliberations, here and application. We can find a way to resolve and to accelerate the process. That is the work for us to do, and for the regulators, the national regulators that support us in that.
Perfect. Well, Costas is about to shoot me if I don't close the panel. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists, and